Yo, what's up guys? I'm Talon. If you don't know who I am, I've been rank 1 in Wild Rift all solo queue, and I've also been a 5-role sovereign on 5 different accounts in 1 season all solo queue. Today I'm going to be talking about jungle pathing. You can see the main kind of tips to jungle pathing are on your screen right here. We're going to be going over 4 total clips, one of me playing a late game scaling jungler and talking about pathing in regards to late game scaling junglers. Then we're going to have a game where we're playing an earlier game jungle, but the point is going to be more what you want to do in a majority of games when you don't have a bunch of ganks that work out. And then the last 2 clips are going to be the ones that are much more involved, where something goes different in the game, whether it's the enemy jungle being inefficient or seeing certain situations where you actually get to make more informed decisions, where you look for an invade or you do more complicated things than just the default. So basically the first 2 clips will be very, very focused on what you're going to default to in a majority of games, and then we'll talk about the times where you can kind of do something different in the last 2 clips. Additionally, link in the description below has a Google Doc, which has a link. If you click on the Google Doc, it basically links videos of all of the important concepts that you need to understand in Wild Rift. And then lastly, link in the description also gives information on my coaching. If you're interested in getting coached by a 5-role sovereign and a rank 1 player like myself, information on that in the description. Anyways, let's get right into the video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so as I said, we're going to be going over 4 full early games. So basically talking about jungle pathing from 0 minutes to 6 minutes, the entire early game jungle pathing that you're going to need to understand. So starting off, we're going to be starting in the loading screen for every single one. Here you can see I am Fizz Jungle. I purposefully picked a late game scaling jungler so I can show you guys how you want to path when you're a late game scaling jungler. So the first thing you want to take into account, there's 2 main things when deciding which lane to path to. And if you don't know what I mean by which lane to path to, I mean if I say I want to path to the top side of the map, then I'm going to start on the bottom side camps, because then that leads me towards the top side. Or if I want to go to the bottom side, I start on the top side camps and I get led towards the bottom side as I full clear. So there's 2 main things to take into account. First, you're going to take into account lane volatility, and second, you're going to take into account lane strength. So what I mean by lane volatility is how likely they are to fight and just how much fighting is going to go on overall. So for example, 2 melee champions who are very aggressive early game are going to fight a lot. Whereas an enchanter support plus a scaling ADC, they're not going to fight very much. So the ADC and enchanter, they're going to have very low volatility, whereas those early game melee champions are going to have high volatility. So high volatility is really good when you're a jungler who wants to gank a lot, because additional volatility in fighting means more people are going to be low health, which means you can influence that heavily. So when you're a jungler like Lee Sin, like Vi, or a level 5 jungler like Wukong, these types of junglers are going to want to path towards volatility very, very frequently. Whereas late game junglers are going to want to path more towards lane strength. So basically, do you have the winning matchup? For example, Jace here beats Yone. So when it comes to these late game scaling junglers, you just want to path towards the stronger lane, because then they're going to be able to give you enough prio for you to safely farm, not get invaded, and not feel too much pressure. Whereas again, those early game junglers, they especially value volatility, but I do want to make it clear that you want to value both. You know, there's a mixture of both. So volatility is important for pretty much every jungler, because having easy ganks is important. But then that lane strength makes it easy. So you don't want to path towards a super volatile lane if it's super volatile in the enemy favor and you have a really losing lane matchup, for example. So with all of that said, where are we going to path this game? This game, we're going to path towards Jace and Yone, which actually turns out to be Yasuo Yone, because the Yasuo and Jace lane swap, but it doesn't matter. Either way, same thing applies. So if we see here, Ashe Nautilus, very volatile, lots of fighting, but Lucian Nami, also very volatile and very, very strong early game. So if I path towards that as a late game scaling jungler like Fizz, and Hecarim matches me, I'm going to lose the 3v3 because I'm just really weak early game. Whereas Jace or Yasuo into Yone both have winning matchups, which means that additional strength, and they're relatively volatile as well, but that additional strength especially means that I'm going to be a bit safer as it relates to pathing towards that lane. So that's ultimately why we decide to path towards the in my mind, I thought it was Jace, and I'm like, oh, it turns out it's actually Yasuo. Still, same things apply, though. And then here, you always want to control ward the opposite side of where you start. So if you start on the blue buff, you control ward your red buff, recall, grab sweeper, so that you can see if enemy ward, when you're looking for a gank, and then go to the side that you want to start on. So here you're going to see it's a very, very slow clear, because I don't really play Fizz jungle, so I don't even know how to clear properly, which is like perfect for, again, this video of showing you guys how we want to play late game scaling junglers. So again, early game, first things you take into account, lane volatility, lane strength, and then first clear, make sure you control ward opposite side of where you're going to start, recall, grab sweeper, and then go to the other side. So that's basically what you need to make sure you understand early game. As you can see, my dual lane lose very hard very early. So you can see pathing towards them probably wouldn't have worked out too well. But then something I want to note as well is why I always start on a buff. Even if I go to the red side, I start on red buff. So the reason for always starting on a buff is because it takes 2 minutes and 30 seconds for a buff to respawn, and it only takes 1 minute and 50 seconds for small camps to respawn. So due to this, thing, it means that if I clear my red buff first, my red buff's going to spawn closer to my other camps on that side of the map. Whereas if I clear my Krugs and then I clear my red buff after, it's going to take a long time for my red buff to spawn relative to my other camps, which means I'm going to have to spend a lot longer on that side of the map on my second clear round to wait to farm my red buff. So instead doing it like I do it means that your second clear is much, much better, and you have more choice in terms of how long you stay on one side of the map or the other. And also clearing your Krugs right away, for example, if you did start on the red side, means that it's easier for the enemy to invade you because they'll respawn much, much quicker. And so the enemy often can, get that invade if they end up being opposite side of you, and then they find that invade after a gank works out. So because of that, we basically typically want to start on a buff. So I was just talking about those things because those are the early things before really anything happens early game. You almost always want to full clear pretty much every jungler, and then you're going to do something after you full clear. So you have basically two choices. So you're going to full clear, which means clear all 6 of your camps. After you clear all 6 of your camps, which you're going to do 95% of the time, every once in a while you can skip your 6th camp to contest Scuttle if you know you're going to win Scuttle, or to look for a really free gank if you see a really free gank. But other than that, you're just going to do the 6 camps. Then you're going to look to Scuttle. You either will do Scuttle, very, very simply, or you will realize Scuttle's been taken, recall, buy your items, and then go back to the other side where you started on, and then look for the Scuttle there. That's pretty much going to be the gist of early game pathing. In this case, I already knew that Hecarim was bot side for a while, and he probably ended up getting the Scuttle, and so I'd rather go and try to cover this dive, which it was very clear that the Nami and the Lucian were looking to dive, so I thought it'd be a lot more effective to end up looking to cover this, and you're going to see that's going to lead to me getting a couple kills here in the end, one on the Lucian, and then we'll chase down the Nami. So basically, what you see here is, again, early game, you want to typically look to just full clear, and then grab the Scuttle if you can. If you can't, you recall and you do what I did here. Turns out there's a camp up afterwards, so we obviously end up taking this. But basically, the fact that we saw the counter gank angle, or not even the counter gank angle, but just the gank angle because the enemy were pushed so far up, meant that we decided to skip the Scuttle. And again, we knew Hecarim was there for a while, so for those reasons, we end up valuing the top side play over that. Generally speaking, as a late game scaling jungler, the main thing you're looking for is just to farm your camps pretty much as soon as they spawn, and then look for ganks in between the spawn timers. So again, you saw I cleared my full blue and red side, then we looked for a gank in between that timer because that's just when we saw an actual gank angle. Then again here, after that gank works out, I mean, they were very low here, so we wanted to see if we could do anything, but we pretty much go right back to farming again, and we just value the farming over everything. And that's how these late game scaling junglers are going to be. When the enemy decide to gank a lot like this Hecarim, rather than trying to match his ganks when he's way stronger early game than me, I'm simply going to use this to out farm him very, very hard, and he'll continue to waste his time. So again, you can see as the late game jungler, you're pretty much valuing your camps above all else, and then whatever happens after your camps is a luxury. So maybe I get a gank off because, for example, we saw that gank on Lucian there, or maybe I get nothing. But as long as I'm always getting my camps, that's all I actually care about as a late game jungler, because my only real goal is to get as much gold as possible. Here I just wanted to make sure he doesn't get a plate. So you can see, like, you can make these little 5-second sort of adventures where you go in and you stop someone from taking a turret plate, or that type of thing. And you can occasionally look for these plays when you want to make sure you want to pressure the enemy. Or in this case, this is something actually kind of interesting I want to talk about again, because obviously I was just mentioning, well, you want to farm your camps on cooldown, but then why don't I do that here? And so that's pretty much going to be relating to understanding when you can pressure the enemy off to the point that you can get turret plates. So my main goal with pressuring this Kassadin off is getting turret plates, and that's one of the main times where you can end up deviating from just farming efficiently. Because since the Kassadin has to leave here, we're going to guarantee be able to push the wave and get a plate, and the only way we don't get a plate is if the enemy jungle responds, which causes him to lose out on gold. So I'm perfectly fine with that either way. So I have a very high chance of getting myself some gold here, and the worst thing that happens is that maybe the enemy jungle responds. And here you saw we ended up getting the plate, and then also getting enemy jungle to respond. I honestly shouldn't have ulted him. That was a bit greedy, but realistically, it would have been best for me to just go back to farming instead of looking for that ult. But at this point now, my teammates did get the move on bot side, and so we take advantage of that by getting plates here. So we're able to end up killing the Hecarim here, and then we take, additional turret plates. So basically, the main things you can see from this early game, and we find an invade because he's, dead. Obviously, if he's dead, we can get the invade. But the main things you see from this early game are that generally as a late game scaling jungler, you're going to value your camps, and you're only really going to deviate from farming your camps if you see a really easy angle for a gank, really easy angle to take turret plates or that type of thing. And other than that, you're just going to value your farming and your camps. And then after your camps is when you decide to start looking for the ganks. Unfortunately, that scuttle got left at 2 HP, kind of tragic. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what you see here. And so we're able to get a very, very strong early game on a late game scaling jungler where my laners were doing very poorly, which puts me in a position to potentially carry an otherwise basically unwinnable game. Okay, so I showed you the typical late game jungle kind of game, which again is going to be playing around low volatility, low risk plays, making sure you get your camps and you only take guaranteed plates, guaranteed fights, guaranteed ganks, and other than that, you just focus on your farming. Now we're going to show you some games from Vi, but the first game I'm going to show you from Vi is not going to be focused on the fact that she's an early game jungler. It's going to just be focused on the fact that you want to make consistent plays on every champion and you don't have to overforce things. So here, first thing we're looking at is lane pathing. So again, Volibear Mundo, low volatility because they're very tanky, very hard to gank. And also lane strength wise, Volibear versus Mundo, I'm not really gonna expect much. Like, sure, Volibear might win slightly, but it's nothing crazy. Lucian Nautilus, on the other hand, very, very high lane strength and good volatility because Nautilus has that engaged so he can make plays happen against these Zeri Karma, which are weaker early game. And they have okay ways to escape my ganks, but they're still, again, weaker early game, and my ADC support do create decent volatility there. So because of that, we end up pathing towards them, as you see here. And here we'll skip through the early game pathing because you see what I'm doing, the first, clear, nothing complicated. What's important to note, again, in this kind of clip, what I want to show you guys is that you don't need to overforce plays when they don't end up, showing themselves. So my Lucian got an early kill in the duo lane, which means they end up recalling to get their health back right as the time that I'm getting to them. And so all I do is I grab the scuttle here, and then I sit briefly to see if I can find a gank because I don't have any camp spawning yet, but then I just recall because it's clearly, nothing's going to happen. And so then we end up going topside because that's where our next camps are going to spawn. Around 2 minutes and 30 seconds is when the camps will start to respawn on this side of the map. And so now we're just like, okay, we have this brief time before our camps are going to spawn on the top side. Let me see if I can make anything happen. For some reason, Volibear decided to ult this guy. That was never going to work, but I respect it. But again, you just see, we're pretty much just trying to see if we can make anything happen just because of the fact that we have nothing else to do, right? We're going to farm on the side of the map, but we're waiting for our camps to respawn. And then you see basically as soon as my camps are all respawning together, which again, you see they do respawn really close to each other because I started on a buff, I'm able to just clear them all, clear all three of them, and nothing too complicated from there. Now here is going to be the first time where you see anything different happen. So in here, we started on the opposite side of the Kha'Zix. So I started on my blue buff, he started on his blue buff, which means that he's going to be on the opposite side of me. And very often when you're on the opposite side of the enemy jungler, they're going to make some type of play happen. And you're not always going to be able to stop it because the enemy jungler will just, obviously they're on the opposite side of you. Maybe they make a play happen. Great. You can't do anything about it. When this happens, you have two options. One option is to proceed normally, continue to farm your camps in the normal way you would, all of that. The other option is to make a play on the other side of the map. And so basically it's just going to come down to decision making in the specific game to determine what you want to do. So here Kha'Zix ends up forcing pretty hard on my on a bot dive here. And so because of that, we end up going and ganking, or going and invading his red side. Now the reason I knew his red side camp was spawning was because my raptors were up. And so if my raptors are up, his are probably going to be up because we started on the same side of the map, which meant that we did a very similar clear. And so I know that his Krugs are about to spawn too, which is why you kind of see me waiting around until the Krugs end up spawning and then taking these. And so basically we use the fact that we know we're opposite side of him to get some level of, to make some plays happen here. And then again, those plays basically mean that we just get a bit of extra gold. You're not always able to counter gank or stop the enemy jungler from ganking. Sometimes the enemy Lee Sin's going to go 12-0 and he's going to have an insane early game and there's nothing that you can do about it. But what you can do, again, is just take what you can on the opposite side of the map. And so here, again, we knew Kha'Zix would probably be invading us as well. And so we end up, you know, realizing that if we get back there fast enough, we can potentially catch him out on the invade, making him kind of waste some additional time. And again, you see basically all we did here was we gained one camp because I got his Krugs and Raptors. He only got my Raptors. Here, unfortunately, I messed up the gank. I could have definitely gotten the kill here. But basically, the Kha'Zix gets stuck on the side of the map for a lot longer than he wants to be since he has his red buff up, whereas I get to be on the side of the map where my camps are spawning. And again, basically all of this just relates to understanding that we're on the opposite side of the jungler. When we're on the opposite side of the jungler, we're not trying to match them over and over again. We're trying to use the fact that they might overextend occasionally on the map to abuse their inefficiency by invading, by ganking on the other side of the map, or, you know, whatever else. Basically just looking for those types of things rather than, you know, trying to do anything crazy. And then now here, because we know the enemy jungler is definitely going to go back to his red side, we're able to look for a gank and then take turret plates after. So again, very, very important to understand that after you look for these ganks, if you pressure the enemy back, you just simply take some plates. So that's all we do. We take some plates here, and then we recall, go back to our blue side, and we farm our blue side camps. Kha'Zix ends up being here trying to invade, but we're able to catch him out. So again, very simple early game, but this is what is important for you guys to see. Is like it's literally 0-0 and 1, but even in a 0-0-1 early game, I'm getting proper gold. I'm getting my first item. I'm farming my camps pretty much as they're spawning, using jungle tracking to make these certain plays, you know, to invade, or deciding when I want to counter gank, or understanding that enemy jungler is going to be on the other side of the map at certain times, which means that I can stay for turret plates or other things. This is all of these very simple plays, even in a game where you go 0-0-1, are very, very important. Okay, so again, the first two early games you saw, they're very standard. That's how a majority of your early games are going to play out. You're going to play, you know, just making the simple play, farm your camps when they're up, look for ganks in between farming your camps, maybe take an invade if the enemy showed himself. Nothing too complicated. Now, these next two lanes are going to be extremely, or these next two early games are going to be extremely involved. You're going to see different decision making, and I want to talk about the nuance behind this. And I also want to emphasize that this is not something you're going to do frequently. It's just what you're going to do in certain games when the opportunity presents itself, because the enemy jungler is, you know, pretty inefficient or makes silly mistakes. So the enemy jungler here is set. And if we look at the lanes again, Senna Xayah, Senna Xayah versus Lucian Yuumi, not very much engaged, not a lot of volatility, and Lucian Yuumi loses that matchup. So not a lot of reasoning for me to pat there. Whereas Aatrox and Mordekaiser, they're both melee champions. Aatrox is strong early game, and we also do notice that our teammate is pretty high rank, our Aatrox in this case. So for all of those reasons, we want to path towards the Aatrox here. So that's what we want to, you know, just first mention, is that simple pathing. But then what I want to show you guys is, again, you're going to see sometimes, I'm sure you've played against junglers, they level 3 gank or something, and their gank works out, and you don't exactly know what to do. It's like it's an enemy Lee Sin who just spams an early gank, and it works out, and it's really frustrating. And this is something that definitely happens very frequently, and I'm basically going to be showing you guys sort of how we go about abusing these types of players. Because the types of players who are going to force these level 3 ganks early game are usually not going to be good players, which means you're going to be able to abuse a lot of different mistakes that they're going to make throughout the game because of their early inefficiency. So you're going to see Set very soon is going to gank on the top side of the map. And again, we'll talk about how we kind of respond when we see that. So right now, you see how I'm paying attention to the volatile lane because I know stuff's going to happen. We end up seeing that Set ends up chasing and ends up eventually, I think, flashing and getting the kill, basically. But you do see that Aatrox is actually winning that lane matchup because it is also a pretty good lane matchup for him. And this player was overall pretty good, so we do have that. But the first thing is just reading their map movements. Like, very, very simply, just look at how I'm scrolling my map onto this set. This is nothing complicated, but these are the types of things you need to see. You need to see where the enemy goes after these types of ganks. So like when I scroll my map on him, what I'm looking at right now is this, or like figuring out where he's been. So if we look at it, he has a red buff and he has no blue buff because you can see the red circle under him. And he ganked at about a minute, which means the only way he could have really been able to do that is if he did just his 3 red side camps, and then he got the XP from the kills. So he has, again, very, very clearly just done his 3 red side camps and no blue side camps. So I understand that if he does die here, he's going to go back to blue side. So that's the first thing to understand. Second thing to understand is where he's walking. He has done all of his red side camps and he's not recalling. He's walking this way. Of course, this means he's going to go for scuttle. And so we can expect at 125, which is 6 seconds from now, he's going to be on the scuttle. Very, very simple, logic there. And because of that, you see how I wait over the wall so he can't see me so I can surprise him. And again, we know that he doesn't have, I don't remember if he flashed or not, but I think we knew he didn't have flash, or if he did, I don't know. But I think, yeah, we pay attention to the fact that he didn't have flash. Could have flashed after him even if we needed. And then basically because of that, again, we're able to get a huge early advantage and end up getting the kill as well to our Aatrox. And then this is where I want to talk about, again, kind of a little bit of different gameplay from what you're going to normally see from me. And that's going to be me starting to be basically making plays to look for invades on the enemy jungle rather than making plays, just farming normally. So again, Set was very inefficient. He went now to his bot side, as we already explained, and his red side camps are going to be soon spawning. So I'm thinking, okay, let me see if he skipped any camps. Maybe he did something weird, because he did do very weird pathing. And in this case, we find that his raptors are up. So we use that time to take his raptors. Again, we're very confident that he's never really going to be there. And then what this allows us to do is it allows us to make a play on the person who's very, very strong on our team already, which is the Aatrox. Aatrox already has killed the Mordekaiser twice, and here obviously we find a free gank, so we take the free gank. But Mordekaiser has already died twice. He's very, very weak. And so we know if we continue to spend time on this side of the map, when we also see Set ganking on bot side, it's going to be very, very important, or very, very easy. Because again, Aatrox is level 5, Mordekaiser is level 3, and he has a big wave stacking. So in these types of situations, it's actually okay to skip a couple camps because of how much we'll gain. Like notice we're going to make Mordekaiser lose literally like 7 or 8 minions. We're going to be able to get a bunch of turret plates, and we're going to potentially cause Mordekaiser to die here. In this case, I don't remember if he actually fully dies, but either way, we basically make him lose like 1 million gold, so he absolutely can't do anything. And during this time, we're able to continue staying on the side of the map where we are way stronger than the Set because of what we did early game, to just continue to abuse the fact that, again, the enemy basically can't do anything. They're down multiple levels, and this is, again, a very common thing. You have a fed top laner, instead of farming all of your camps, when he's stacking a wave and he's up multiple levels, you look for that dive angle, and you just continue to put him further and further ahead, and basically that's what you saw us do here. And because of that, we're able to very easily kill Mordekaiser and continue to just snowball through the top side of the map. So again, basically what I want you to take away from this is that you can abuse the enemy early game efficiency, or inefficiency rather, like the Set ganking for no reason, to understand which of his camps are going to respawn, where he's going to be in the future, because again, we, for example, knew he didn't clear his blue side camp, so he's very likely going to go back to blue side. Use his map movements to understand, like we can catch him at the scuttle, for example, because we're going to be often higher level than him, stronger than him, higher health, because we're not forcing ganks. These types of things. And then when you have a hard winning laner, playing around that hard winning laner super, super hard, so that they are continuing to be able to snowball when they're crashing a big wave, diving with them so that the enemy can't get those minions, denying all those minions, taking turret plates. But then after a play works out and you've forced these ganks for a while, make sure you farm your camps again. Like you see how I end up going and farming all 6 of my camps. I don't overforce ganks here. Now I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to farm these simple camps. Even though the enemy forced mid side, rather than constantly trying to force and force and force, I make sure to grab my camps so that I can recall and spend my gold. Rather than, again, continuing to force mid and fight and fight and fight. Because at some point you do have to go back to farming. You can't just constantly fight. And then once you've farmed your camps again, now you can look back to playing around your teammates. And notice how, once again, the person I'm really looking to play around is this Aatrox, because he's the one who's really strong. We understand that we're basically able to just probably 3v2 most people at this point because of how much stronger we are. And so we continue to play around that laner. So you see, you kind of constantly want to play around your stronger laner as it relates to pathing. But yeah, basically all of those reasons end up allowing us to have just a super strong early game where we're able to completely snowball with our Aatrox and just kind of carry the game from there. All right, so the final game here. So if we look at it, we have Mbessa versus Garen. Garen's going to probably beat Mbessa. And Garen is very, very hard to kill, so there's low volatility there. There's just not much fighting and not much ability to really kill anyone. Whereas Misfortune Sona, honestly not that strong early game either, but more likely to be winning lane into Morgana Leona, so we end up going there. Plus Leona has no flash, as we can see, so not necessarily the best, 2 lanes here, and these are the types of games where you can kind of go to either lane. You're mostly going to base it on strength, since they're not very volatile, not that strong either, so you don't really have a lot of great options. So you kind of just have to choose one. Really here, you could choose either, and I wouldn't blame you. But at the end of the day, again, the Leona not having flash and the fact that Misfortune is pretty strong early game means that we sort of decide we want to go there. So we end up deciding to path towards there. But once again, we're going to talk about kind of abusing enemy inefficiency and paying attention to what's going on around the map. So you're going to see there's going to be kind of a weird play here early where the Talon is going to late kind of help with that invade on the bottom side of the map. You can see, like, or not with the invade, but my teammates are going to go pretty far up. And again, Talon's going to show early on the bot side, kind of wasting some time. And we're basically going to use the fact that we see Talon here, you're going to see in a second, to find an invade. So just very simply, when you notice the enemy jungler doing a certain thing, you know, forcing fights early game, these types of things, whether it's a gank, whether it's a random invade, just simply looking for the invade. Again, like, we know he's on the blue side. We have this time to look for his camps. Now, the enemy ended up defending the Raptors, I believe, here, or they had a ward on the Raptors. And then we knew that because we got warded, that the enemy Talon might contest us on red buff. So all we're really going to be able to do is take one camp. So it's also important to notice what happens throughout. You know, like, initially I would have invaded his Raptors, but then we get spotted, so we decide let's just grab Krugs and then use the fact that we got the early Krugs to find that gank onto the Garen in an unexpected angle, because we're able to gank him at 125, which is earlier than normal. And we're able to justify it because we were able to get that invade off, denying the Talon at early level 5. And then from there, we know, okay, what did Talon do? Talon very clearly went to from his blue side to his red side, so he wouldn't have gotten the scuttle. So not only did we deny him the camp on the top side, the Krugs, which means that basically not only do we get the 150 gold from it, but we deny him 150 gold. But then we're able to get both scuttles, which means that he's able to lose out on that gold, and then we're able to farm our entire red side. So in this case, you know, what I would normally tell you guys is just farm your camps normally. But here, because we're able to deny the enemy, you know, gold, even though he got 2 kills, we're only down about 300 gold from him, just because of all this stuff we're able to deny. So again, it's a lot of times about salvaging the play when the enemy jungler does get these good early game kills by just abusing the fact that in order to get those kills, they almost always had to do something inefficient. You know, like, they had to skip camps, they had to do something like that. And because of that, you're almost always able to abuse it in some way, shape, or form, like we were there to get those additional scuttles, to get the Krug invade, to find the flash from Garen, and blowing that flash from Garen often will lead to a kill here. You know, I don't think it does here, but then because we do have the timer on his Krugs, we know that the Krugs just respawned, and because we know they just respawn, we're able to once again find this additional invade, which is just able to get us more, you know, free plays, basically, free gold, and we're able to continue to keep the gold relatively close, even though the Talon, again, has gotten 2 early game kills, which obviously is quite, you know, problematic for us. And so then we go back to farming right after we take his camp. We don't overforce ganks, we don't overforce plays, we just continue to basically build an XP lead on him because of these additional camps that we're able to farm. And then the fact that we see him gank bottom side now means that we know he didn't have enough time to go to red side, so we're able to now take additional red side camps as well. We see that his red spawning, but it's probably going to spawn a bit too late, but we're still able to get his Raptors. And so all of this happened, and he gave away a shutdown to our teammate. Unfortunately, it did go to Sona, but he still gives a shutdown away. And so the fact that we're able to get the shutdown means that he loses, you know, he gives that 600 gold by dying, and then we're able to still keep our gold close to him because we're using this jungle tracking to understand where he's going to be and then responding properly. Like, that's basically what I want to show you guys from this clip. Again, it's just like, you're not always going to win through kills. Oftentimes you're going to win through, you know, just simply farming the camps as they're coming, and then using the fact that the enemy jungler overforces ganks and whatnot to take some simple camps. Now, here's an interesting situation as well, because typically I'm going to tell you, go to your camps, right? Like, go to your camps right away. Don't just force random ganks. But again, there's these unique situations in a game where the enemy are very obviously going to do something and you can potentially deny them a lot and not lose out on too much. So here, the enemy are very likely going to decide to stay around for turret plates. So since we know they're going to stay around for turret plates, we can go here, deny them turret plates, get an easy kill on them, and then we'll be able to go right back to our red side after. And so basically that's what we end up doing here. We're just like, okay, if Talon and Garen are going to go for turret plates, we'll be able to find the easy gank on them, and that leads to us getting, I believe, a double kill here. And so just this simple stuff too, like understanding every once in a while it is okay to be a little inefficient if you see the enemy over forcing on turret plates, or you can kind of tell from their body language that they're going to be doing these types of things. Because then what it also leads to is additional turret plates, because again, now the Garen's dead, so he can't defend the turret, and we're able to find these additional plates. So basically what you're trying to figure out is, am I going to be gaining more from this inefficient play? Which, I mean, would make it not inefficient, but am I going to be gaining more from this play than I would from just farming my camps normally? And how likely is this play to work out? So that play was extremely likely to work out because Talon was low health, walking towards the turret plate. Garen was on the turret as well, and my Ambessa was there to follow up. So like all of those reasons together mean that in this unique situation, I am okay with skipping a camp and being a bit more, you know, inefficient in terms of which camps I'm gonna farm. So basically that's it for this clip. I just wanted to just show you guys how when the enemy jungler overforces, instead of trying to match them and overforce as well, you can find these invade angles and beat them through farming and through efficiency rather than trying to overforce a bunch of ganks just to somehow, you know, match them. Okay, so that's going to be it for the video. So again, I just want to mention a few main things. So volatility and lane strength, those are the things you're really going to take into account when deciding on which lane to start towards. Then as it relates to later parts of the game, or rather the rest of the early game, make sure that you are just simply farming your camps as they spawn, or at least your side of the map when they spawn. So you don't necessarily need to farm your Krugs as soon as they spawn, but you need to make sure you're on your red side once your entire red side is really close to respawning. And then again, the times where you can deviate were really shown in the last two clips, where the enemy jungler is really inefficient, and we can abuse that inefficiency to take these really guaranteed invades. Or, you know, conversely, if you see really easy ganks where you know you can gain a lot because you can get the turret plates, you know the enemy are overextended, the wave looks really good. Or, for example, in the third game where we really abuse the Aatrox, you know, winning his lane so hard to get turret plates. If you see those angles where you can get these additional things, and it's very, very likely because you have a hard winning laner with a stacked wave, with a low health enemy, with no flash, with whatever, then you can in those cases be inefficient. But basically, if you are in doubt, which is what this last point says, farm your camps, then gank. And the only time that you're going to basically deviate from that is when you can very clearly articulate the reasoning. So, such as enemy jungler is not here, enemy has a, you know, there's a big wave stacking and my teammate's about to dive and I know I can get a lot more out of this. Unless that's the case, then otherwise you're just going to farm your camps. But yeah, basically that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.